Baby boomers spend $25 billion on alcohol a year. Gen X spends $23.1 billion on alcohol a year. Millennials spend $23.4 billion on alcohol per year. And Gen Z spends $3.1 billion. You got 25, 23, 23, and then 3. About a 20th of the amount of the prior 3 generations. That is wild. Gen Z is not drinking. Sobriety is becoming cool. Sobriety is becoming hot. It's in. Let's talk about it. Welcome to Hold My Drink, a sobriety podcast. This is a no judgment zone. I really freaking like my life without alcohol. You're not alone. I hope you feel seen. Sobriety has changed my life completely. So there is kind of a trend in sobriety right now. Gen Z is drinking significantly less alcohol than the prior 3 generations, and that is for a number of reasons that we'll go into. But today I wanted to talk about the stats, talk about why that trend is arising, and just discuss this increase in drinking less of this younger generation. It's amazing. It's cool to see. I do think somewhere down the road, far down the road probably, drinking is going to be looked at like smoking is now, where like our great grandchildren cannot believe that we used to drink, period, but that like we used to drink every day and drink to relax and like drink while we're at home watching TV. That's just my thought. That can be a little extreme. But it is truly what I think is going to happen. I think that alcohol is going to have labels on it that says all the harmful things that can come from consuming it. That's where I think we're headed, and I think Gen Z kind of agrees. So let's talk about all the different reasons that Gen Z is drinking less and about why the prior 3 generations drank so much more. I also just want to share some fun facts because some of these stats are crazy. They're staggeringly different in Gen Z compared to the other 3 generations, like the first one I opened this episode with. Gen Z drinks 1/20th or spends 1/20th of the amount on alcohol that the prior 3 generations did, which is crazy. And you know what? Let's just jump right into this. One of the reasons that people think this is the case is because Gen Z is just aware of the negative effects of alcohol. It's publicly available. There's social media. They're talking about it. People are on TikTok discussing this topic. There's also this stat that says Gen Z ranks their mental health as just as important as their physical health. And alcohol is a depressant. I talk about this all the time. It is a depressant. It's right there in the name. It will cause you to have worse anxiety, worse depression. Your lows in life will be way lower. So it makes sense that Gen Z, a generation that values mental health, would not consume something that is bad for their mental health. It's also bad for physical health, of course, and that is important to this generation as well. So a lot of people think that it's because Gen Z has access to all this information. They're just a lot more aware. But some people say that Gen Z drinks a lot less because of the legalization of marijuana. And annoyingly, I can't find the stat that I had earlier. I screenshotted all these different statistics, but it said something like, I'm pretty positive, it was 81% of Americans say that they have a dispensary in their county. And so I think just this other relaxing drug being available, being considered more healthy. I have a lot of thoughts on THC as well, but I don't do THC. It's not something I'm going to participate in. And I think there's a lot of negative sides to that as well. And I think it's just as addictive as any other drugs or alcohol too. But with that said, it has brought down the amount of Gen Z people feeling that they need to drink alcohol to relax because they have other things to relax, the THC. I don't know if I can say that M word on Spotify without them canceling me. So I'm going to say THC. When it comes to millennials, they say that the younger group of millennials, so people currently under 35 years old, drink significantly less than the millennials over 35 years old. And I believe that range is 35 to 48. That is kind of the older range of millennials. And then you have ages 28 to 35 as the younger range of millennials. And the younger range of millennials is drinking a lot less than the older range. And a lot of people think that that is because during the millennial upbringing, The campaign started coming to schools like DARE, which was the, group against drugs. At my high school, I remember they brought a crashed drunk driving vehicle into the school to show us what could happen if you drive drunk. And so there's all these campaigns that were arising during the millennial upbringing. So they say that the key difference between how millennials drink and how the prior generation Gen X drinks is that millennials are aware of the negative effects of their drinking habits, whereas Gen X wasn't aware of it. Millennials still drink as much than Gen X, but millennials are aware of the negative effects of alcohol. Gen X was not. And then we have baby boomers ahead of them. And the reason that baby boomers drank a lot is because of World War II. They drank to relieve stress. They drank to have fun. In a time that was so dark, they turned to alcohol to enjoy themselves. So people were stressed. There was a big turn in culture at that point, and a lot of people turned to alcohol. And that consistency in drinking, or that trend in drinking, has continued for that generation well beyond the World War II era. According to alcoholhelp.com, over the past 2 decades, over the past 20 years, 65% of baby boomers continue to drink. And the number of these adults who are older than 65 have a 25% higher drinking rate than the national average. So the people older than 65, most of them drink in comparison to all the other age groups. A lot more older people do consume alcohol, especially compared to Gen Z, when, let me see if I can grab the stat, but a lot of Gen Z chooses not to drink. It says here that Gen Zers drink on average 20% less than millennials, and millennials drink less than the prior generations to them. It seems like people are growing up, becoming of age, they turn 21, and they're deciding to not pick up a drink in the first place. So Gen Z's parents are Gen X and baby boomers. And it says that Gen Zers watching their parents develop health complications from excess alcohol use may also be a driving force of why this younger generation is more conscious when it comes to alcohol consumption. Yeah, that definitely makes sense because the baby boomers are said to be the heavy drinkers, and we, young millennials and Gen Zers, grew up watching parents of our friends, our own parents, whatever, growing up with alcohol problems or alcohol overuse. And so I think a lot of these younger people are seeing that and saying, I don't want that to be me. Like maybe they had a relative pass from some sort of alcohol-related disease, and they said, that's not going to be me. And I see that a lot on social media, and people are sharing about that. So again, Gen Z, the generation of social media, they are talking about this, they are aware of this, and people are sharing it. It's a topic of conversation for them when it hasn't been a topic of conversation. I mean, sobriety is kind of common now, and saying that you don't drink isn't like some crazy shock. Oh my God, that's wild. People know what it is. People are like, okay, yeah, I've heard of other humans doing that. Makes sense. People understand the health risks of drinking alcohol, so they say, I understand why you wouldn't drink. Yes, that makes sense. Whereas I feel like 10 years ago, if you were sober, it was like, okay, you clearly have a problem. You're an alcoholic. You are troubled, and that's why you don't drink. Whereas now maybe there's this understanding that someone could not drink alcohol because they're looking out for their health. And I think that's really cool. I always say that health should be the automatic response people have to their curiosity with why people don't drink. It's like, okay, alcohol is not good for you. We should always assume, oh, that's why somebody doesn't drink, because it's not good for you. Obviously, nobody wonders about why people don't smoke cigarettes. We know that cigarettes are not good for you. They cause lung cancer. They'll kill you. And so we're not so curious why someone doesn't smoke cigs. It's pretty obvious. And I think we should look at people who don't drink alcohol as that sort of same thing. Obviously, people don't drink alcohol because it's not good for you. Makes sense. You do you. That sounds great. Looking out for your health. I think we should assume that instead of assuming that people have a problem. Here's an interesting little paragraph they have on mental health and Gen Z. It says the same goes for Gen Z's mental health. Instead of using alcohol as a crutch or a way to overcome their struggles and sorrows, they're instead refraining from alcohol and going to therapy, yoga retreats, having honest conversations about mental health, and taking up healthier lifestyles that involve exercise and nature. How cool. Oh, gosh, yeah. I mean, no one introduced me to drinking to numb your emotions, but I was going through a hard time and I gave it a try myself. Had some alcohol and it made that hard time a lot less hard. It made the days more manageable. I woke up, I was feeling awful about myself, about my life, about my current situation. I talk about the situation in other podcast episodes, but it was bad. And I drank about it. And I drank a lot. And it helped, which is that's the sucky part. Looking back, is like, yeah, it did the job. It covered those emotions that I was having like a Band-Aid. It is a quick fix. It is not a long-term fix. And in the end, all the drinking that I did actually caused me more sorrow and pain, and my lows were lower because I was using alcohol as a crutch to deal with my sad, negative emotions. But it says that Gen Z is focused on therapy, yoga, and mental health retreats. Definitely the therapy conversation is interesting because I was born in 1996. I am literally the cusp year for a millennial to Gen Z. It says that Gen Z is 1997 to whatever, the young people, and millennials are 1995 to whatever. And I'm 1996. Where do I belong? I'm really not sure. Sometimes I feel like I'm totally Gen Z, and sometimes I feel like I'm totally millennial. I think I operate in a millennial way, but I'm so involved with Gen Z, and I love their health awareness. I love their marketing on social media. I think they're witty. I think they are breaking the norms. And so I feel like I relate to both generations. But anyway, when I was growing up, in the early years, therapy was still kind of taboo. In all the early 2000s rom-coms and stuff, if there's ever a scene in therapy, it's like this crazy person who's going in and like, I just can't find anybody to love. I'm broken. Help me. I'm going mad. I'm seeing things. It definitely had a negative connotation. Therapy did. And then as I got older, I kind of lived through that transition. And now therapy is talked about, first of all. People are aware of it. People go to therapy, and it is no longer stigmatized to be in therapy. Or it's, no longer stigmatized to say that you're in therapy. In fact, I bet you if you were to poll people, that most people would say that they're in therapy, like the majority. In fact, let's look it up. Why not? And boom, here we go. That's why we keep a phone close by. We have, in 2024, 30% of people said that they've had therapy within the past 12 months. So that's not just people who have gone to therapy once or twice. 30% of people have gone within the last year. And that is an increase from 13% in 2004. So it has increased a lot in the last 20 years. And like I said, I lived through that transition. So I think therapy is really helpful for people. And like that article said, just prioritizing exercise, prioritizing health. I mean, Gen Z is reading the labels on their ground beef. I was at the grocery store today. This is where I'm a little Gen Z, or at least health aware, similar to Gen Z. I was in the grocery store today and I was shopping for ground beef. And I care so much about the quality of ground beef that I consume now that I'm standing in the aisle literally for probably 12 minutes studying the labels on these ground beef packages because it's hard to find a good one. The one that has the most lean meat is usually more processed because they had to, get the fat out and find the lean meat. So it's more processed, more preservatives. And then typically it won't say grass-fed on it. It's like you have to get a fattier chunk of ground beef in order to have the grass-fed there's another word you're supposed to look for. Oh, this is going to kill me. Leave it in the comments if you know what it is. But it's like grass-fed, grass-finished. I thought of it. Okay. At the grocery store that I was at, which was QFC up here in the Pacific Northwest, I could not find one single package of ground beef that said grass-fed, grass-finished. Couldn't find one. But I did find the Butcher's Blend, which when I went to their website, it said it was grass-fed, grass-finished. So yes, they do carry something. But then that meat was 80% lean, 20% fat or whatever. And that's not a ratio I want. I want to go for a super lean beef. So anyways, all this to say, I was in the grocery store for a long time reading the labels, and I'm just like, oh my God, the fact that we're aware of this stuff, that is why some people are afraid of technology. It's taking away jobs, like it's making us antisocial, blah, blah, blah. Whatever. Of course, there's negative sides to advancement in technology, but I personally believe that advancement in technology is always good for the progress of society. And the fact that we have social media and access to information at our fingertips, like I just looked up that stat. I was wondering how many people are in therapy. Oh my God, what would you have to do back in 1980 if you wanted to find out what percentage of Americans are in therapy? Like literally go stand on the side of the street and ask people and poll for 7 hours and get an average for at least your specific area of the world? Or go rent out a book from the library that maybe has a report that's outdated from 3 years ago? Oh my God, it would be so hard. My family and I talk about that all the time, how if you want to look up what something means, you used to have to go to the library and rent out the encyclopedia for the letter that you're looking to look up. How wild is that? I mean, that's just bizarre. And now we just pull up our phones and look it up and we have access to information right away. So back to the whole point of this episode, which is Gen Z drinking so much less than the prior generations. It's cool. It's a thing. And I read that Gen Z is kind of creating the sober curious movement. A higher percentage of people participate in things like Sober October or Dry January. People are just interested. It's sparked people's interest. There's enough data behind alcohol being bad for your brain, being bad for your body, being bad for your mental health, that Gen Z is paying attention and choosing to consume less, which I think is really interesting and really cool. As somebody who doesn't drink alcohol, it's cool to see mocktail bars popping up. And pretty much every bar I go to has a mocktail list. And they have non-alcoholic beers. You walk down the beer aisle at a grocery store and there's a whole section for non-alcoholic beers. There is a movement happening. And I feel like right now it's still a little bit ahead of the curve, but it's getting there. I mean, imagine when Gen Z is the parents and they're raising their kids without having alcohol around anywhere. Very interesting. What are the next two generations going to look like? What's Gen Alpha going to be like? Are they going to be so anti-alcohol, kind of like millennials are very anti-cigarettes? We shall see. And I just want to finish this episode with a couple of really interesting stats that I screenshotted earlier in my research. Here we go. 21.5% of Gen Z do not drink alcohol. That's the stat I was looking for before. 21.5% of Gen Z do not drink alcohol. So cool. Almost a quarter of Gen Z people don't drink alcohol at all. I, at least in my personal experience, when I go out to weddings and parties and events, amongst the general population, let me just tell you, the people who are not drinking is a lot less than 21.5%. And I just want to throw this out there because I wanted to do a whole episode on this. When I find other sober people out at parties, out at events, it's really special. And I connect with those people and we have a little conversation. And it's so cool to connect with other sober people while it's still a niche community. Because it seems like it's not going to be so niche in a few years. I'm going to be one of many people at the wedding who don't drink. But nowadays, it's really special to connect with the other sober people in the room. All right, next stat. 39% of Gen Z drinks only occasionally. Okay, that's cool. That's cool. 50.3% of Gen Z drinks 2 to 3 days per week or only on the weekends. Wow. So earlier I was reading about baby boomers and how they drink, and I believe it was 30% of baby boomers say that they binge drink when they drink. Now, that's a large percentage. 30%, not just saying that they drink, they overdo it and binge drink on the occasions that they do drink. And then you look at Gen Z, which is half of them only drink on the weekends or a couple days a week. That's so cool. So they're definitely prioritizing the moderation of alcohol consumption. And they're also popularizing sobriety in general. Next stat. Female Gen Zers are more likely to drink less than once a month or 1 to 3 times per month compared to men. Okay, cool. So all the female ladies are drinking like once a month in Gen Z. All the Gen Z ladies, that's what I meant to say. All the Gen Z ladies, they're not drinking that much. Cool. Good for you gals. Get it? All right, just a couple more here and then we will wrap the episode. More than 1/4, so greater than 25% of Gen Z, says they are very concerned about the potential health effects of drinking alcohol. So most people, or no, not most, over 1/4 of Gen Z is very concerned. It says very concerned in quotations. I'm guessing they had like a sliding scale, sort of concerned, not concerned at all, very concerned. I'm guessing that's how it worked. And 1/4 of them say that they're very concerned with the health risks of alcohol. I can say growing up, I sure wasn't. We were taught that cigarettes are bad, drugs are bad, but we weren't taught that alcohol is bad. It's way too commercialized. There's way too much money in it. There's so many bars. There's so much alcohol available. It can't be bad for you, or at least that's how I kind of grew up thinking about it. All right, the last stat I will leave you with, almost 86% of the Gen Z population believe that their mental health is as significant as their physical health when considering drinking alcohol. So that's the stat that I was trying to remember earlier. Looks like I got it pretty much correct. 86%. So the vast majority of Gen Z believes that their mental health is just as important as their physical health when it comes to drinking alcohol. And I would just like to say that is something I have only become aware of in sobriety. So my mental health, I guess, wasn't as much of a factor when I first quit. The reason that I finally quit, I was battling with it for a long time. And some of those battles I had were to do with my mental health. But the reason that I said enough is enough is because I started having pain in my liver. And when that happened, I pretty quickly, like within 2 weeks, I think, I quit alcohol. I said, that's it. I'm not going to, drink myself to death. So the physical reason is why I said enough is enough. But in sobriety, I've learned so much more about the mental health side of things. There's an adjustment period when you get sober, and you might feel like crap for a while. But after you do get sober, your mental health, your mental clarity, your outlook on life, everything is so much better. You live a positive life. I'm going to make a whole episode on lucky girl syndrome, but let me just say you get a lot more lucky in life when you don't drink. When you're making a good choice for your health, for your life in general, like good things just happen to you. And that's why they call it lucky girl syndrome, is because you just keep getting lucky. Good things just keep happening everywhere you turn. It's wild. And also in sobriety, I'm learning a lot about brain health. Another episode I want to do. Sorry, I keep saying that, but I'm excited about this podcast. So lots of new episode ideas constantly coming to mind. But I want to do an episode all about brain health and the effects that alcohol has on the brain, how it's been linked to Alzheimer's and dementia, which has had no real cause in the research that's available to us. And now alcohol is one of the things that's coming up as a pretty clear indicator of dementia and Alzheimer's. So I either want to do a ton of research and do an episode about brain health myself, or in the future, if I could somehow get a brain doctor on this podcast, that would be incredible, to tell us about the effects of alcohol on the brain, because it is staggering. And I have listened to a lot of podcasts. The Skinny Confidential does a lot of good episodes interviewing doctors and health professionals, and none of them drink alcohol. And they all have bad things to say about what alcohol does to the body and what alcohol does to the brain. And just learning about that in sobriety is a passion of mine. I really enjoy it. And I probably didn't want to see that stuff when I was heavily drinking, because I'm like, I don't want to know what I'm doing to myself. But now that I am sober, I'm really curious about all that and really interested in learning more about it. So Very cool. Very good chat about Gen Z and how they drink a lot less than the prior 3 generations. It's crazy. And yeah, it's cool to be sober apparently. Gen Z's doing it, so it must be cool, right? So fun. I've really enjoyed chatting about this with you guys. If you have anything else you'd like to hear in an episode, please let me know in the comments. I read all the comments on Spotify. I don't know if you can leave them on Apple Music, but Apple Podcasts, but you can also leave a comment on YouTube. You can DM me on Instagram, on TikTok. Let's chat. Let me know what you want to hear about next. And feel free to share this episode with some of your Gen Z friends or some of your baby boomer friends. Let them know what's going on with their generation. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time. Bye.